A specialized investigation into a rare and lethal viral cluster has reached a critical stage following reports of hantavirus transmission in an unexpected setting. Public health agencies, including the World Health Organization and the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, are currently monitoring a significant outbreak of Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome, or HPS, that has emerged during the second quarter of 2026. The focus of the current inquiry centres on the MV Hondius, a Dutch-flagged vessel that departed Ushuaia, Argentina, on April 1, 2026. The ship was navigating the South Atlantic with nearly 150 passengers and crew when a series of severe respiratory illnesses began to surface. As of the second week of May, official records confirm 8 cases, including 3 fatalities, yielding a case fatality ratio of approximately 38%. While hantaviruses are traditionally categorized as zoonotic diseases, meaning they pass from animals to humans, this specific event has reinforced a chilling reality regarding the Andes virus strain. Unlike the majority of its viral relatives, the Andes variant is documented to spread through person-to-person contact. This development has shifted the narrative from a strictly environmental risk associated with rural rodent exposure to a potential domestic and interpersonal threat, particularly among those in close or intimate contact. 6. The virus itself, a member of the Hantavirus genus, has long been known to exist in 2 primary forms: hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome, which is common in Asia and Europe, and the more lethal Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome found across the Americas. For decades, the established medical consensus was that humans were dead-end hosts, contracting the virus only by inhaling aerosolized particles from the urine, feces, or saliva of infected rodents, specifically the long-tailed pygmy rice rat in South American regions. However, the current 2026 outbreak provides further epidemiological evidence that human-to-human transmission is not only possible, but can occur in confined environments such as cruise ships or residential homes. Health officials have identified the index case as an adult male who likely contracted the virus through environmental exposure in Argentina before boarding. Subsequent infections among his close contacts on the ship occurred during the incubation period, which typically ranges from 1 to 8 weeks. This long window of dormancy allows the virus to travel across international borders, often manifesting symptoms long after the initial exposure event. The sudden onset of the disease, characterized by high fever, severe muscle aches, and a rapid progression to respiratory failure, continues to challenge diagnostic capabilities in non-endemic regions, making this latest cluster a primary concern for global surveillance networks. The laboratory investigation into the 2026 South Atlantic cluster has utilized advanced metagenomics and viral sequencing to pinpoint the exact mechanism of spread. Testing conducted at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases in South Africa, as well as labs in Switzerland and the United Kingdom, confirmed that the causative agent is the Andes virus, specifically the South lineage. Detailed tissue analysis and immunocytochemical studies have recently shed light on why this specific strain facilitates human-to-human transmission, while others, like the Sin Nombre virus in North America, do not. Scientists have identified that in patients infected with the Andes virus, the pathogen successfully replicates within the secretory cells of the submandibular salivary glands. This is a critical distinction. While most hantaviruses remain confined to the lung epithelium and vascular endothelium, the Andes virus essentially turns human saliva into a vector for infection by localizing in the salivary glands and being discharged into the oral cavity. The virus can be transmitted through respiratory droplets or direct contact, a finding that explains the heightened risk for couples and family members who share living quarters or engage in close physical contact. +2. The progression of the disease remains one of the most aggressive in the field of virology. According to reports from the World Health Organization's International Health Regulations focal points, the initial symptoms are often deceptive, presenting as a standard febrile illness or gastrointestinal distress. Within days, however, the virus triggers a massive inflammatory response, leading to increased capillary permeability in the lungs. This results in the hallmark of HPS. The lungs fill with fluid, leading to acute respiratory distress syndrome and cardiogenic shock. In the case of the MV Hondius, the ship's medical staff faced a crisis as patients went from mild distress to requiring mechanical ventilation within hours. Because there are no approved vaccines or targeted antiviral therapies for hantavirus, clinical management is restricted to early supportive care in intensive care units. The 2025 regional data for the Americas underscores the severity of this lack of treatment, with 229 reported cases resulting in 59 deaths across 8 countries. The ongoing research into viral glycoproteins and the way the Andes virus interacts with cell surface receptors, such as beta-3 integrins, is now the top priority for labs seeking to develop a preventative or therapeutic response to this increasingly mobile threat. Public health guidance regarding hantavirus is undergoing a necessary evolution as the 2026 surveillance data continues to come in, while the risk to the general global population is currently assessed as low. The World Health Organization emphasizes that the Andes exception regarding person-to-person spread requires a different approach to containment than traditional rodent-borne outbreaks. For those in endemic regions or travelers returning from South America, the primary prevention remains the mitigation of rodent contact, sealing entry points in homes, using bleach solutions to clean suspected areas of infestation without stirring up dust, and avoiding direct handling of wild mice. However, in light of the documented human-to-human transmission routes, health officials are now issuing specific protocols for the close contacts of suspected cases. Isolation during the prodromal phase, the period when early symptoms like fever appear, is considered vital, as this is when viral shedding in saliva and respiratory secretions is believed to be at its peak. Healthcare workers are advised to maintain strict airborne and contact precautions when treating patients with unexplained severe respiratory distress, especially if a travel history to the southern cone is present. The limits of current knowledge still present significant hurdles for international health agencies. It remains unclear why the Andes virus evolved this unique transmission capability while other hantaviruses did not, and the exact threshold of close contact required for transmission is still being quantified. Data from the recent cruise ship investigation suggests that prolonged exposure in shared cabins was a major factor, yet the possibility of transmission through shared utensils or brief physical contact remains a subject of intense study. As the MV Hondius remains under monitoring off the coast of Cabo Verde and international contact tracing continues for disembarked passengers, the global community is reminded of the importance of robust public health infrastructure. Early detection is the only reliable tool for improving survival rates, and the 2026 cluster has proven that a localized environmental virus can quickly become an international logistical challenge. Monitoring of these viral special pathogens will continue as researchers work toward a more comprehensive understanding of the salivary pathway and the ecological factors that drive these sporadic but deadly outbreaks. For more updates on emerging public health reports, consider subscribing to this channel. The clinical and laboratory investigation into the transmission dynamics of the Andes orthohantavirus has shifted focus toward the specific biological mechanisms that facilitate human-to-human spread. While most hantaviruses, such as the sin nombre virus prevalent in North America, are contracted strictly through the inhalation of aerosolized rodent excreta, the Andes strain, native to the border regions of Argentina and Chile, has long been a subject of intense scrutiny for its ability to bypass the animal vector. Recent laboratory findings and epidemiological clusters have confirmed that the virus is present in human saliva, transforming what was once considered a purely zoonotic threat into a significant interpersonal public health concern. Molecular analysis conducted at high containment biosafety level 4 facilities indicates that the virus successfully replicates within the salivary glands, allowing for high viral loads to be shed into the oral cavity. This discovery validates the extreme risk designation for intimate partners and family members, as activities involving the exchange of oropharyngeal secretions, such as kissing or sharing utensils, provide a direct route for the pathogen to enter a new host. In the hospital setting, the progression of Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome, or HPS, remains one of the most aggressive clinical trajectories in modern medicine. National health agencies reporting on recent outbreaks have detailed a two-stage disease progression that complicates early intervention. The initial prodromal phase, lasting between 3 to 5 days, presents with non-specific symptoms including high fever, severe myalgia, focusing on the large muscle groups of the back and legs, and gastrointestinal distress. During this period, the virus is actively replicating and shedding, yet diagnostic certainty is often elusive without specialized testing. According to official surveillance protocols, health providers must rely on reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, known as RT-PCR, to detect viral RNA in the blood or saliva. However, because these symptoms mimic common influenza or endemic fevers, many patients do not reach specialized clinics until the second, more lethal stage, the cardiopulmonary phase. At this point, the virus triggers a catastrophic vascular leak syndrome, where the capillaries in the lungs begin to seep fluid into the alveolar spaces. This leads to rapid onset respiratory failure and cardiogenic shock, often requiring immediate mechanical ventilation and extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, or ECMO global health monitors, including the World Health Organization and regional ministries of health, have emphasized the discrepancy between verified epidemiological data and the broader public perception of the risk. While the term extreme risk is applied to those in close physical proximity to an infected individual, the overall geographic spread of the person-to-person variant remains geographically constrained to specific ecological zones where the Andes virus is endemic. Nevertheless, the logistics of containing a saliva-borne hantavirus pose unique challenges for travel and shipping sectors. While there is currently no evidence of the virus surviving long-term on dry surfaces or through standard international trade cargo, the movement of infected individuals during the long incubation period, which can extend up to 6 weeks, creates a significant surveillance gap. Lab reports from international reference centres suggest that the viral load in saliva peaks just as the patient transitions into the severe respiratory stage, meaning the most infectious period coincides with the time the patient is most likely to seek emergency care. This has forced a re-evaluation of personal protective equipment protocols for frontline medical staff, who must now treat suspected HPS cases with the same level of airborne and contact precaution as they would for highly contagious hemorrhagic fevers. The contrast between claims of a potential pandemic and the verified biological limits of the virus, a key area of agency reporting. Unlike highly transmissible respiratory viruses like measles or SARS-CoV-2, the Andes hantavirus does not appear to sustain long chains of transmission through casual environmental contact. Instead, it requires the intense prolonged exposure characteristic of household units or intimate partnerships. Data from the most recent clusters indicate that while the attack rate within a home can be high, the R0 or reproduction number remains relatively low in the general community. Agencies are currently focusing on contact tracing to identify individuals who may have been exposed to the saliva of an index case. These individuals are often placed under active monitoring or voluntary quarantine for the duration of the incubation period. The lack of a vaccine or a targeted antiviral therapy, such as ribavirin, which has shown inconsistent results in clinical trials for HPS, means that public health intervention is currently the only effective method to prevent the last kiss from becoming a focal point for a new local epidemic. As public health authorities refine their response to the confirmed person-to-person transmission of the Andes hantavirus, prevention strategies are now being bifurcated into environmental mitigation and interpersonal containment. The foundational element of hantavirus prevention remains the management of rodent populations in and around human dwellings. Because the virus is excreted in the urine, feces and saliva of the long-tailed pygmy rice rat and other sigmodontine rodents, household hygiene is a primary defense. Officials stress a rigorous protocol for cleaning potentially infested areas rather than sweeping or vacuuming, which can kick up viral particles into the air. Residents are instructed to thoroughly soak contaminated surfaces with a disinfectant or a 10% bleach solution. Wearing gloves and high-efficiency particulate air masks during this process is considered a critical standard of care. This environmental focus addresses the initial zoonotic jump, but the 2026 findings regarding salivary transmission have introduced a new layer of public guidance. For those living in or travelling to the southern cone of South America, the focus has shifted toward the monitoring of household clusters. Because of the long incubation period, which can stretch between 1 and 6 weeks. Health agencies recommend that anyone who has had close or intimate contact with a confirmed patient be monitored for the sudden onset of fever or respiratory symptoms. The practical takeaways for the general public and healthcare providers centre on the recognition of the Andes exception in most parts of the world. Hantaviruses do not spread between humans, but the specific biological adaptation of the Andes strain to the human salivary glands necessitates a shift in behaviour for close contact groups. Practical guidance now includes the strict avoidance of sharing personal items such as drinking glasses, utensils or toothbrushes when a member of a household is presenting with a fever of unknown origin. Furthermore, international surveillance networks, including the Global Outbreak Alert and Response Network, are emphasizing the need for 42 days of active monitoring for high-risk contacts, a period that covers the maximum known incubation window. This surveillance is not intended to incite panic, but to ensure that if a secondary infection occurs, the patient can be moved to an intensive care environment before the catastrophic pulmonary phase begins. Early hospitalisation remains the single most effective factor in reducing the mortality rate, as it allows for the proactive management of fluid balance and respiratory support that can mean the difference between survival and fatal organ failure. The honest limits of current scientific knowledge remain a significant hurdle for global health policy. While the presence of the virus in saliva has been confirmed through molecular sequencing, researchers still do not fully understand the minimum infectious dose required for human-to-human transmission. There is also no clear data on whether asymptomatic individuals can shed the virus, or if the transmission risk is strictly confined to those showing active clinical symptoms. This uncertainty places a heavy burden on public health ethics. Reporting must balance the extreme risk to intimate partners with the statistical reality that these outbreaks remain rare and geographically isolated. Sensationalism is a documented hindrance to effective public health. Therefore, officials urge a calm, evidence-based approach to risk assessment. The ethical responsibility of the news consumer and the health professional alike is to treat these reports as a prompt for vigilance rather than a cause for widespread alarm. By focusing on established containment methods, rodent exclusion, proper sanitation, and the isolation of symptomatic patients, the cycle of transmission can be broken. Surveillance of these viral pathogens continues as a permanent fixture of global health security. As climate change and human expansion into previously wild habitats increase the frequency of zoonotic encounters, the lessons learned from the 2026 Andes virus clusters will likely inform future protocols for other emerging infectious diseases. The goal of the current reporting is to provide the transparency necessary for informed decision-making, ensuring that the limits of our knowledge are addressed through continued research and that the known risks are managed through disciplined prevention. Vigilance in monitoring one's own health after potential exposure, coupled with the transparent reporting of symptoms to medical authorities, remains the cornerstone of community defence. As we continue to track the developments of this and other public health threats, we invite you to subscribe to this channel for in-depth, factual reporting on the front lines of global health.